there is a very, very good chance that we are about one tiny, tiny little step away from full-blown SHTF. Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So just another free-form rant in the car today because the communist cameraman was too busy spreading that free love with a head full of chemicals over the holidays and decided to catch himself some COVID. So he is down and out for the next week, so I get to free-form rant without any editor whatsoever. Not that he does edit out anything that I don't approve of in my videos. And just so you guys know, that whole communist thing is a running inside joke because anybody who's even slightly far left of the most extreme right side of the spectrum is obviously a communist, so it's a running McCarthyist inside joke. Yeah, so he's probably going to be down and out for the next week or so, so I figured I'm going to drop some of these beautiful unhinged rants on you guys for the next week and just see what happens and trip myself up with the algorithm once again. I was getting there. I was being a good boy. I was just talking about survival in the woods and all that fun stuff, and I had to go and hit you guys with some reality once again. So here we go. All right, guys, I got to interrupt my own video for a second because I just got a text from the one and only, the great comrade in arms, the communist cameraman, who loves sucking at the teat of big government whenever the opportunity presents itself. You know who you are. He just told me, get this, he was waiting in line for 7 hours for a simple PCR test. Yes, a PCR test that could be administered by a chimpanzee. No disrespect to the lab tech people. I know you guys have a sophisticated skill set that extends well beyond the administering of COVID tests. I get that. This is not a slight against you because I know it's not your fault. We know whose fault it is. It is the fault of the people who have had 2 years, the overpaid CEOs, execs in the healthcare sector and in the government who had 2 years to master something and make efficient and smooth out the logistics of administering something so freaking simple. Could you imagine how long you're going to be waiting when it really hits the fan, when you really need help? Where is the guy who is planning out how to do this as efficiently and quickly as possible? Because we could do it. We don't do it because we're run by morons. Okay, morons who are likely going to save themselves when it all starts to collapse. So I have a really bad feeling, guys, and this title is going to be appropriately named as such. And if you think my titles are bad, for all you trolls out there that the algorithm brought here for some reason or another, probably because you're a soon-to-be prepping convert and the algorithm knows you better than you know yourself, for all of you, you can bet your bottom dollar that there's a lot more sensational channels out there than me. One of those being Johnny Bravo, who every single day the guy puts out a headline that's probably going to give an old lady a heart attack. If it was her first day on the internet, she would likely sell all her possessions and be bugging out into the wilderness if you just watched one Johnny Bravo video. Anyways, so I have a bad feeling, guys, and this is partially motivated by my own premonitory, what would you call it, intuitions about the situation. Something was different about this New Year's. You see, usually when I'm drowning my sorrows at the end of a bottle on New Year's, which is the only time I ever do it, just so you guys know, so don't worry, I don't have a problem or anything like that. But usually when I do that, well, listening to Old Land Sign, or Old Land Sign, or whatever that song is, usually I listen to that song a few times, I reflect on the past, and, you know, I'm shotgunning rum while this whole thing is going on. It's just my way of kind of cleansing and paying credence to the year, okay? Usually I do that, and it feels good to reflect on the year. I didn't do that this year. In fact, I got about 1 minute into the song, a few sips into the bottle, and I'm like, screw this, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. So that means the world's going to end, of course. But no, on a more serious note, there seemed to be a sense of despair that permeated the atmosphere this New Year's. It just seemed that there wasn't a lot of celebratory stuff going on. I know there was things going on in Times Square, and there was a lot of people who were unmasked and partying it up, and I'm sure there probably was a lot of people who were celebrating. But I just got the sense that there was a lot of uncertainty because last year, in the so-called dark winter, which was supposed to descend upon us in January, February, March, and of course it did to some degree, there was that known. We knew that things were going to be tough. But this year, there's a lot of big unknowns. And we know, I was just watching a video by Kyle Kalinske today who was talking about how the threats for political violence are at an all-time high. Obviously, you guys seen the video, or some of you might have seen the video I did a few weeks ago that talked about 100 days until worldwide riots, as there's going to be pushback to measures which are brought in after Christmas and New Year's, because if the communist cameraman's gallivants are any indication, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be stricken with this thing in the next week. And I think this week it's going to blow up in a big way, and whether or not that's enough to move the needle, to take those more aggressive lockdown measures, and what that's going to be met with in terms of resistance. And I'm just kind of a guy on the sideline just watching the whole thing crash and burn. But I will say that there is a very, very good chance that we are about one tiny little step away from full-blown SHTF. And it has less to do with the whole Omicron situation and more to do with the situation developing in the East. Because I get the sneaking suspicion, if I was a military strategist and I seen what was going on with the Russia and the Ukraine right now, if I was China, I would probably be ready to make my move on Taiwan if that situation blew up, because you would want to do it while the US was occupied in that regard, because they're in no position to, I shouldn't say they're in no position, but it's going to be a lot harder to have a battle on two fronts. And of course, that has the potential of blowing up the economy, especially if you try to put major sanctions on the world's two biggest superpowers at once in the midst of shortages, in the midst of an energy crisis in Europe. You know, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for a global economic implosion. And the situation could quickly devolve from there. Now, is this all just some ploy by the military-industrial complex cabal to sell more nukes and make billions and billions of dollars hands over fist and possibly even jumpstart the economy in the process? That may well be. That may well be, because, you know, a good old Cold War might stimulate the economy, right? But I do get the sneaking suspicion that this is all starting to look like history repeating. You know, you have the Roaring 20s, and you have the Great Depression, then you have a big war. That's kind of just how things progress, but it's always going to progress in slow-mo. And of course, before the Roaring 20s, you had the pandemic, but maybe we're switching those this time. So we had the Roaring 20s, which were the 2010s, and maybe the tail end of that in the 2020s. And then, of course, you had the pandemic, and you had the economic recession, which we're now going to be in. And it's going to seem like it isn't, of course, because inflation is going to completely distort what the stock market is actually doing. So the stock market can be going up, but if it's not keeping pace with inflation, then it's not really worth a lick. I think the thing to be looking at next year is going to be gold, or this year, I should say. I think that gold is going to retake its place as the main barometer of what the economy looks like, what the global economy looks like. And crypto is still going to become a bigger part of the economic pie. But I do believe that this is the year that a lot of people move back to gold. And once the pandemic starts to fizzle out and the veil has been lifted, I would suspect that gold is going to reassert itself as the dominant. I mean, it still is, but recognized in more mainstream circles as the dominant indicator of how the market is actually doing. So far right now, the price of gold is still kind of hovering around those pre-2020 levels, which is a good sign in a sense, but I have a sneaking suspicion that people just haven't caught on yet. So I'm not a gold bug by any stretch of the means. In fact, me and the guys over at Think Preparedness, we're going to be having a discussion about the benefits of cryptocurrency in the not so distant future. So stay tuned for that. And not just crypto, but global finance as a whole, and how it pertains to emergency preparedness, and how you should be diversifying any expendable assets that you might have. But I do have a feeling, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this, because from what I'm seeing on a lot of the progressive talk show host channels like Russell Brand and the like, I know he kind of is more of a moderate, slightly to the left, But he's been making a lot more videos about doomsday preppers lately. Unfortunately, he needs to do a bit more research on the guests that he brings on, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that there's a lot more people talking about preparedness than there was a year ago in places that you never thought you would see these people, whether that's on Sam Cedar's channel, Kyle Kalinski's channel, Rational National's channel, the guy I just mentioned, Russell Brand. So prepping is starting to become a lot more mainstream, which is a good thing. And we're going to talk about why, the pros and cons of that in the next video that I release. But I'm also concerned that that means that the clock is ticking down to 0 hour. So all I can say, guys, is keep your head on a swivel, because times just seem a little strange right now. Things just seem a little strange. And I think everybody feels it. I'm not saying that you need to go out and sell all your belongings and run off into the wilderness. Not yet, anyways. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. What are your predictions for 2022? Are you getting ready for it? What do you think is going to happen with this situation out in the east? Do you think it's just going to blow over? Let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Stay safe. Stay warm. Canadian Prepper out.